What's up, guys? It's John here, and I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving weekend. As promised, I wanted to do my in-depth breakdown of the NFL playoffs. This is probably going to wind up being more like something you listen to on the way to work or something like a podcast, because I try my best, but I can't keep these under like an hour sometimes, just because I'm basically going into the entire playoffs, and not only who I think is going to get in, but exactly how I think they're going to finish. There's a few, reasons behind my rationale. So far, we're off to a good start, 3-0. All underdogs. Somebody said I was a little reckless for suggesting that. Now, the Bengals made sense. I mean, last week, so there's a few teams I've divorced. I went into this, the Jets, the Raiders. The Bengals weren't one, because, like the Falcons, only even more obviously so, and you'll see in a second, the Bengals have a very convenient schedule with Burrow returning for, a team to make a comeback. Now, I have a couple different theories, so I'll just kind of address them as I'm picking. So we're just going to pick Week 13. Now, you already know all my picks. On some of these, I have, covers, but we're just going to pick the winners. So I do think the Eagles are going to win. I'm going Brown just because it looks like a fishy line. And another thing is the picks I'm doing. I'm doing my best too, because we're going to be picking weeks in advance here. So again, get a cup of coffee or something, because we got 6 weeks. But the thing is, I basically did a lot of permutations just to see which teams would need unrealistic things to be in the hunt in a few weeks. So if a team could theoretically make a run, but you would need all these other teams to lose. The best way I can describe it is I approach these playoffs almost like a presidential election with the electoral votes, where it's like, okay, well, this candidate could win with this, and this, but it's so unlikely. It's the same thing with these matchups. So these playoff teams, by the way, these current playoff teams are not who I think are going to get in. For the most part, they are, but not really. This is just where it's at now. But yeah, I try and pick with okay, if I think can a team make a comeback, and if so, do they need other teams to lose out or something ridiculous? So anyway, for some teams, that's really not the case. I do think the Browns are going to win just because, again, it just looks like a trap spread to me. Now, these next two are interesting because there's a lot of ramifications to both. And again, not immediate. Like right now, it's not going to make a difference. But just, I guess, down the road. And Jags-Titans is a very interesting one. I originally have the... and again, this 5-week, 6-week pick, an analysis, whatever you want to call it. It's again, me picking. Obviously, I don't know how every week's going to go for the next 6 weeks, especially since we don't even have Vegas lines yet for anything outside of this week. But I'm just trying to pick, overall, okay, split the difference. So, okay, it makes sense that this team would win this week, lose this week. And what looks the most realistic. So there might be, one or two here where I might have liked more in my last video. So, again, these picks here, I wouldn't take exact week 13, as gospel. My idea here is, again, just to get an overall picture of the playoffs. Why, again, maybe one or two on here might be ones that I wasn't too sure about in the video, but when I plug them in here, they make a little more sense. And honestly, they might line up anyway. I'm not positive. Here, Titans-Jags doesn't make much of a difference, just because the line, and I noticed Trevor Lawrence loses games he should win and vice versa. I think Titans make sense, and we're just going to plug in Colts because I did just a show. So if the Colts win, they're a 3 seed. If the Texans win, you see they pop into the playoffs. Colts win, it's the Jags. So it's little things like that. Basically, a Texans win keeps the division nice and close, which is what I think happens. So, if you come down here, and I'm trying my best to make this where it's legible, you see my projections will be 8-4, 7-5, and 7-5 for Indy, Houston, and Jacksonville. Now, even if Jacksonville beats the Titans, not much changes. 8-4, 8-4, 7-5. So you can see there's not much of a difference. But I think it makes sense that the Colts don't win and pull 2 games ahead and just kind of kill any fun in that division. So Texans are a game I do like a lot. So anyway, not trying to take too long, but I've noticed the last just like whole season, I've just been kind of running through my picks with like 30 seconds to explain each one. Whereas, in the past, and what I like to do is really an in-depth, boring, if you will, breakdown. This Dolphins one's interesting because it keeps them in the hunt. They have Waller returning. They're kind of a fun team. And you'll see if I think they make a run. But 5-7 here. And speaking of making runs, I have one theory that it's not even a theory. It's like happening, and they're gonna push it. It's just a matter of how far they push it. So anyway, Dolphins staying in it. Again, Saints getting a horrible pick, maybe getting Arch makes sense to me. I am going to give the Falcons the win here, simply because, again, they play the Bucks, I think, in 2 weeks or something from this date, things like that. And then they have a primetime game, which, again, usually you don't have a team that's out of the running, not always, but usually in a primetime slot, week 16, 17. That's the reason I haven't completely given up on the Falcons. They're a team I said I was separated from. The Bengals, I not quite anything yet. The Falcons are a separation, meaning even if they look bad in the first quarter, it might turn into a divorce like the Jets and the Raiders. And it makes this game tough because technically I've divorced the Jets, so I kind of made a vow not to bet on any games that involve them. But I am fading them, and this Falcons game, again, if you look down here, contingent on other teams, keeps them, a game out of the division. Just makes sense that they win the game. And then Rams-Panthers. Rams are 10-point favorites. I have them winning in my video. I think they win. And then this one's an odd one, too. It's only a 3-point spread. Baker's questionable, sure. And you see when this happens, all of a sudden, again, the Falcons are 1 game out. So this isn't me, trying to make the Falcons fit. If that was the case, we would have been doing that with a lot of other teams. It's just, I've noticed, kind of like the Bengals tonight, it doesn't take as much as people think. So anyway, and I don't think any of this is unrealistic, is kind of what I have in my video. Seahawks just makes sense to me. I think they win. The Vikings are trash. Raiders-Chargers is an interesting one. There always are going to be upsets. And for no other reason except because I think it makes the Chiefs story interesting. I'm going to have the Raiders win here. And, of course, the Chargers could win. It doesn't change too much. Again, I might have, a wild card team that I think gets in that doesn't. But I'm going to go over the main ones and the ones that I think definitely get in. So we got Raiders. The Steelers absolutely, not absolutely, but almost absolutely need to lose this game. If they win, you see down here they go to 7-5. Cincy at 4-8. Very unrealistic things would need to happen. And by the time Cincy plays Baltimore again, I think they play them again, and these nice divisional matchups, it's not going to matter because, as you can see, Pittsburgh. So to me, the Bills winning makes sense here. Also, if Pittsburgh wins, it doesn't knock the Bills out of the playoffs, but it makes it very hard for them to get in. Bills just make sense here. There's another interesting thing with the Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. So arguably, your Mount Rushmore quarterbacks, right? Your top 4 quarterbacks. They all have something similar going on. And when I was running through this earlier, I really wanted to find a way to make the theory work. But it doesn't completely work. But it does, really, because the story's still there. Just not the payoff. And I know I'm being vague, but we're going to get into it. I'm taking the Commanders, and I took them in my video just because this plus 200 looks really weird to me. Not many playoff ramifications here outside of Denver and New England, flipping whatever. And then in this final game, I do have the Patriots. Now, Week 14, we could start getting into some of the narratives that I have. Obviously, one of them is, as I've gone into a few times, just comebacks in general. So Dallas is another team that's kind of making a comeback. You see Detroit right now isn't in the playoffs, and either team makes sense. Because of the tie, I'm going to take Dallas here, just for now. I think that tie is going to be pivotal for Green Bay and probably Dallas. Um, Dolphins, Jets, it just makes sense. Again, I think the Dolphins win this game. And again, I don't know the lines yet or anything like that. But again, you see I put the Dolphins at 6-7. So should the Bills lose, which they conveniently line up with the Bengals, just go figure. The Dolphins are only a game out of the wild card. Do they get in? Well, we'll figure that out. But I just think as far as the appeal, it makes sense for the Dolphins to win, and the Jets are garbage. The Ravens have to win this game almost. You would think it wouldn't matter because the records are close. If the Steelers win the game, it drastically changes the next couple weeks. It kind of gives the Steelers a lock on the division, I guess, because of tiebreakers, where like the Bengals, they can still get in and stuff, but the Bengals would have to do a lot more. So anyway, I went down like the following weeks, and if the Steelers win this game, I can say it's more boring because of the matchups. Like, it'd be really hard for this three-way race to make any sense. One team would be immediately eliminated from a tiebreaker, but if the Ravens win, it's like it's a three-way race. Any team can win, and it's just more entertaining. That's the best way I can put it. So I think the Ravens are going to win for that reason, especially after coming off this embarrassing loss. And I keep saying this, but it always seems to be the case. I think they're going to tease Tomlin finishing 9-8, or 8-9. First losing season. It would be with Rodgers, so it's fitting. So I think we do get that. And again, I'm not. So I got the Bucs winning. It just seems realistic. The Saints are a bad team. I think the Saints might get an upset or two, but I think the Bucs beat them in next week's game at home. Just makes sense, especially coming off a loss. Well, a hypothetical loss. Colts, Jags. So for a while, I felt like the Colts were kind of like runaways, and maybe I'm just underestimated them. But we got the Patriots and Broncos, and sure, Patriots, Broncos, Colts finishing 1, 2, 3 is interesting because of the four I just went into. Imagine your first three seeds are these, let's be honest, boring, usually garbage teams, and your 4 through 7 is Lamar, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Burrow. We can get something close to that, but it's unrealistic to get that exactly. That's too much WWE booking, and it's just not possible to get that exact thing. But we can get something close to that, and I think that's going to be the story. These quarterbacks, these MVPs, all making comebacks. Jacksonville makes sense to me here. I don't think Indy's going to keep this stronghold. I think New England will, and then probably Denver. And then the next 5 is just going to be a complete free-for-all. We got Tennessee, Cleveland here. I just took Tennessee. It's like one of those games where it's probably going to be like 50-50 despite Cleveland being at home. Public will probably be on Cleveland, so nothing too deep there. But these teams out of the playoffs, not much is going to affect it anyway, so I kind of picked them, with less, conviction. We have Commanders, Vikings. I could see the Commanders winning, but let's give it to the Vikings here. Both teams are trash in my opinion, but again, I'm just trying to mix it up. Now, Seahawks, Falcons, I got the Seahawks winning this. So again, I'm being realistic here. Again, while I have certain teams like Bengals, Falcons still alive and think they can make runs, the Chiefs will get into as well, because I actually predicted a few interesting things with the Chiefs. But with the Falcons here, it's a primetime matchup, so they certainly could. And you see, even with that, they're not in the playoffs quite yet. But I'll just say the Seahawks get this. It's prime time. Maybe the Falcons play good, but I'm trying to be realistic. And then, of course, I am being realistic, but I've been riding with the Bengals. I mean, Burrow was an early fantasy pick of mine. There's a lot of... Oh, and by the way, I didn't start McPherson, who hit like 6 field goals. I went with somebody else. It's Dicker, so we'll see how he does. But kind of shows how my fantasy goes. But I think Bengals have to win this game. It keeps them in the picture, and you see how tight everything is. Now that will only put them at 5-8. You can see, so still nothing crazy. They're still back, but again, they conveniently play. I think it's Baltimore again, and you see Buffalo hanging in there. Miami's still kind of in the outskirts, and this AFC South I think shakes up pretty quickly, if I'm being honest. So then we got Raiders, Broncos. I didn't do anything crazy, just took the Broncos. Think they probably hold that one. And then I do have the Bears. They're playing the Packers twice, so you can imagine. I think 50-50 booking makes sense. And then if you come over here, this is what we would be looking at thus far. Pretty fun, right? We got a rematch with the Packers Bears, but I feel like that's a fair exception for like a third time. Kind of like if you get like Dallas Philly or something. San Fran Philly would be fun. I don't think anybody would object to this current bracket here. On this side, I would object to a couple of these teams, or at least the order. And probably one of maybe two of the teams. We'll see. But yeah, this is what this is looking like. I try and avoid matchups where we get division rivals playing each other, because what tends to happen is that doesn't happen in the playoffs. We picked an almost perfect playoff bracket last year. It was like week 16, mind you. But there was a couple games where it's like, okay, either this team's going to win and we're going to have a bunch of repeats, or this team's going to win and we're going to have some fun, fresh playoff matchups. So, like, it just makes no sense sometimes, especially, like, in Week 18 if two division rivals play each other. What are the odds they get matched up wild card the very next week? It just, something where I think the NFL would avoid that, for ratings. But anyway, I wanted to continue this. So, went with the Broncos, Bears, and then we got Rams, Cardinals. And this one I did go with the Cardinals. Again, it really has no playoff ramifications. I just think there's going to be upsets. Chiefs do have to win this one. With a Chiefs win, it does not put them in the playoffs yet, but they're getting closer. And then this one, if the Eagles win here, Chiefs still not in. Chargers win, and they're a higher seed. I actually think the Chargers are going to win this game. I think at this point the Eagles are going to be looking pretty. Probably a couple. I think after the way they haven't been that consistent, I think they have a pretty good game against the Bears, and then maybe the public's all over them, and then the Chargers win. So anyway, something like this through Week 14. Week 15, and I'm trying to go quick here, but I'm also trying to cover narratives. And this is where it gets interesting. Again, Falcons, Bucks. So far I had the Falcons splitting. I got them winning and then losing. I got the Bucks losing then winning, something like that. I do think in this matchup the Falcons beat the Bucks. And with the projection, again, you see Bucks still in the division, but it's closer, 7-7, 6-7, 6-8. And yeah, I just think it makes sense. It keeps the division close. It's not much deeper than that. I do have the Bills here instead of the Patriots, just for seeding purposes. And because, again, I don't think the Patriots are going to go, undefeated into the playoffs. So this would match up Buffalo-Baltimore. You'll see Cincy's not in there now. If Baltimore wins, they're in. Cincy wins, they still don't quite flip Baltimore. So looks like Cincy has a lot of work cut out for them. Again, that being said, with Burrow, I don't think he's coming back and losing. Even if it means beating them twice in 3 weeks, it's kind of a Burrow thing to beat, Jackson, Allen, Jackson. So that wouldn't shock me at all. Some might call that a stretch, but I honestly think if you can parlay weeks ahead of time, and you can, so basically just doubling up, that's what I'll be doing. Basically, my winnings from today on the Bengals will be doubled up onto the Bills week, and then the following week against the Ravens. I don't see them losing any of these 3 games. I'm not saying they're going to make a run and not lose a game and make the playoffs for sure. But if they lose any of these games, week 14, week 15, they already won week 13. They're out of the playoffs right there and then, and I don't think they're going to do that with Burrow just returning. I got the Jags here over the Jets. I do think Trevor Lawrence, the Jags, are just more fun in general. So I think of the teams in the AFC South, I lean to them more than the Colts at this point. And then again, the Chiefs just have to win. And this kind of brings me to one of my predictions. I had a prediction that last year, actually, I was like, I wonder if the Chiefs, they get their little three. I thought they'd get the three-peat, so I was wrong there. And then I did mention in a few videos, I could find them, of them missing the playoffs. And then people mocked me, and they should have, because I also brought up that it would probably be the Raiders that come out of the AFC West and make the playoffs. But I thought it made sense that they don't make the playoffs. But now that it's looking like they're not going to, a Mahomes run makes sense. And that's what I'm saying. We're going to have Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, really, because the Bills aren't locked in, and Lamar all racing for a playoff spot. And I think that's really interesting. It's WWE booking when you have, the top guys frantically fighting for it versus they just secure it easily. I do think the Texans will win this one, and I think, again, Houston's more entertaining, just personally. Maybe not than the Chargers, but certainly I think they're more entertaining than Indy, and I think they'll probably wind up flipping them out. Houston or Jacksonville, I think, is just a more entertaining team than Indy. I think Danny Jones' run is over, if I'm being honest. And that brings us to Bears here. I think the Bears do win this game. The Browns could pull a weird upset, but the Bears just make sense to me. I got the Giants winning because I think Dart will be back by then. I think the Giants are going to do pretty good as long as Dart plays. And then I do have Eagles straight up. No reason to pick the Raiders there. Seahawks, kind of same deal. I think they're going to keep the Seahawks and Rams really close in the, and it's going to come down. You can even probably throw the Niners in there to the final week or two, I think, with them. Green Bay, Denver, really hard to call, even now, 50-50. But I'll give it to Denver, more so because it keeps things interesting for the NFC side, to be honest. Titans, Niners. This is where, it just makes sense. The Niners win. And, again, you see the NFC West is looking pretty stacked. I went with the Panthers here. I'm trying to be realistic again. So, it doesn't put them in, but it makes it where, look, you got 7-7, 7-7, 6-8. And we always get this in the NFC South. It's just a matter of who winds up taking the division. It's like a repeat every year. Usually the Bucks. I think it changed this year, but yeah, I don't think the Saints win that game. And that takes us to a really good game, which means we probably won't get it in the playoffs. But we get it at some point every year because it's, the old Stafford versus Goff deal. Stafford used to play for the Lions. Goff used to play for the Rams, did the trade. They did it in the playoffs last year. They love this matchup. But I don't think we're going to get it again in the playoffs. So we probably only get this one time. We might get it twice. You never know. But I think probably just the one time. I'm going to go Lions here. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs, if I'm being honest. I'll give that one away now. I got Dallas. Again, I think Dallas is definitely going to make a run, too. And here's where it gets interesting because, it'd be fun to pick the Dolphins. It would keep them 7-7, one game out of the wild card. If you go Steelers, it doesn't do too much. It does put them just one game ahead of Cincy. It doesn't really matter that much either way. Just because it's a primetime matchup, and I think they like McDaniels. I think they're going to give the Dolphins a little bit of a run here, too. So you can even throw Tua into that category of quarterbacks making a run, or even CJ, too, I guess. Okay, so on to Week 16. And it'll start filling out here. You'll see kind of where my mind is at. So Seahawks, Rams could go either way. I'm going to just say Seahawks win it this time. The Rams got the first time. You could argue that, it makes it where it's not as close in the division. But by this time, they're kind of filling out anyway. And yeah, I just think it's going to be Seahawks getting their win back. I do like the Eagles here. I don't think there's too much to explain. And I got the Packers winning. So basically, I got the Bears winning in Lambeau and the Packers winning in Soldier Field. They love to do that. And I think something like that happens. I'm going to go Saints over Jets. And again, I already looked through these. So it's like a Rubik's Cube. I kind of know how the playoffs are going to finalize when I go pick these. Bills, Browns, it doesn't really matter. But I think the Bills do win this. And again, you can see the Bills, right now the Ravens. The Chiefs aren't quite in there yet. So these top quarterbacks, Burrow, all racing, scrambling for the wild card. The Chiefs beat the Titans. I think that's pretty much of a given, which officially puts them for the first time in a while back into the playoffs. If it holds, we'll have to see. And then a couple more important ones, just because of, again, all these teams are like primed for the playoffs. I do think Patriots win this. You could give it to Baltimore. You see then they're 2 games ahead of Cincy and Pittsburgh. Again, assuming my other picks are right. But even if I've tried to go 50-50, so like either way this would kind of happen. So again, I think that would be kind of boring. So I actually think it's going to be Patriots here, and it just makes more sense. The Patriots are probably going to be favorites in this game. And I like the Chargers. For the football purist, I think it's a mismatch for the Cowboys, but just in general, I think it keeps things more interesting. This could definitely go the other way and make some sense, because Dallas in the playoffs just seems to make sense, but you never know. Again, I just don't believe in the Vikings, and I think the Giants are going to go on a tiny bit of a run with Dart. Nothing crazy, but probably win more than they lose at the end of the year. This one I'm going to give to the Bucks. I think I just basically split up them and the Panthers, so they got one, the Panthers got one. Makes sense to me. I think the Broncos take this one. Keeps them and the Patriots close. And again, I also looked at matchups. And Falcons-Cardinals, I do think the Falcons can beat the Cardinals. I don't think anything is absurd about that. Again, another one where you can break it a couple different ways. If I had the Cardinals and Panthers, you can almost get the same result with just both teams with one more loss, the Bucks and the Falcons. But yeah, I think the Falcons will beat the Cardinals here. Raiders, again, you have to pick some upsets, so I did go ahead and take the Raiders here, just for the heck of it. I mean, we're not going to have all favorites winning. And then we move on to Steelers-Lions. This should be a good matchup. I'm going to, again, go Lions just because I think they get in the playoffs. As you can see right now, they're not. And again, with the Steelers losing, right now it shows 6-9. That's what they'd be at this point. So maybe they don't lose that many straight. It could go this way, to be quite honest. But again, I'm not saying every one of these weeks this is exactly how the games are going to go. It's more, like I said, like an electoral path. I think it's going to break about this game, about this way, if not in this exact order. Bengals, Dolphins. So, got Miami winning here. And you're probably thinking, oh, wow, give up on Burrow in week 16. Well, I have to be realistic, and the Bengals just winning out doesn't make sense to me. This keeps the Dolphins in it, makes it interesting. And I think it's just the best, I think it makes the most sense. And then we got Niners, Colts. And I think the Niners get in. I think the Colts are boring. But I still have the Colts winning this game. You can see the Niners still stay in. The Colts get in with this. But we have 2 more weeks to go still. And you can see things are filling out. And I think my bracket's looking pretty good, if I'm not lying. I got to be honest. I think these are the teams that we kind of expect for the most part. And some fun matchups. So week 17. Again, I have Dallas winning quite a few games, so I don't think they're just going to win out. I do have them losing to the Chargers. So I suppose they certainly could win this game. But I did crunch it. Now, again, the tie could make a big difference if they win this game in week 18. But I'm just going to go Commanders. I think they're going to play spoiler. Lions again, just because, again, I think they finish strong, get into the playoffs. And Chiefs, I think they hold their and they don't have to win out. By the way, the Chiefs, they don't have, they can lose and win week 18 and get in. I just think this is kind of the path it's going to be, a couple wins in a row. So I got the Chiefs winning that one. I do have the Raiders winning. I can't have them lose every single game. So, I was like, okay, what one makes the most sense here? I think Chargers makes more sense than Texans, if I'm being honest. And then Seahawks, they're going to have something to play for. So if this was like they're resting their guys, all that, then sure, Panthers. But with something to play for, I think Seattle obviously wins that game. I do think Baltimore wins. Green Bay can certainly win that game, so that obviously puts Baltimore at 8-8. But I think as far as between Packers, Baltimore, it just makes more sense from a scheduling standpoint for Baltimore to win that one. And then I do have the Bengals beating the Cardinals. I don't think there's much of an argument there. So then they fall a game behind the Ravens. Steelers, Browns, again, that one. I don't think there's anything too much of a hot take to have the Steelers, who then again come to 7-9. This kind of defeats my theory of if Tomlin finishes with a losing season, because ideally he'd be 8-8 going into the final game. So again, maybe I don't have the exact order correct, but I think it's going to be something pretty close to this. I'm going to give the Jets this win just for the heck of it. I mean, anything can happen. There's no reason I'm doing it outside of just like any week. I don't pick all favorites. And again, as we approach these weeks and different results appear, we'll be picking our normal weeks. I just thought this would be like the best way to do the whole playoff thing. So anyway, I think the Titans can get a win here, and the Saints suck anyway. I think the Saints might be the only team I have losing out. I think I might have them getting one win. But yeah, I'll give that one to the Titans. And then I think the Jags get this and kind of boot the Colts out of the playoffs. Again, I just don't think the Colts are an entertaining team at all. And then we got Bucks Dolphins. I got Dolphins winning quite a few games, I noticed, but you know, again, I think there's a reason they haven't fired Mike McDaniel and a few other things. They have a talented team. They got guys coming back off injury, so maybe the Dolphins don't win all these games. Maybe they lose a couple of them, but they're not that big of a factor, as you'll see. I think the Eagles win here. I don't think the Eagles are repeating. So for that reason, I think they're going to be a top seed. You know, I think they're going to win the division and probably be a top 3 seed. Just my opinion. I notice that usually happens. So they'll probably look like the favorite or one of the favorites and disappoint, which is something Philly usually does. I'm going to take the Niners here to beat, and this is a fun one. Anytime you have the first overall pick versus Mr. Irrelevant, which is what we'll have here. You know, with Brock Purdy against Caleb, should be very interesting. And then I do think the Falcons will win this one in prime time, and you can see with this, like the way it's lined up, a Rams win doesn't do that much. And I actually that's for the next 2 weeks. You know, they still play on the road, and it'll come down to who they play, of course, but it's not like Seattle where they're like set in stone. So like they're gonna be fighting, but I kind of split it up. I think between the Seattle and the Rams, I think the Falcons will get one of those. So I gave them the Rams at home. I think that's fair and makes sense. Actually, they play both teams at home, so they really should be able to get one of them. But yeah, not much changes. It's just I think there'll be more the Falcons are playing for, and again, for ratings purposes, a Falcons win makes, in my opinion, a lot more sense here. So week 18, this is when everything's going to fall into place, obviously. First off, I do have the Rams winning this. This will secure them a 5 seed to play, as of now, Baker, the 4 seed NFC South winners. We got Chargers, Broncos. I think the Broncos just win that one. Chargers hold, Broncos hold, nothing crazy there. Chiefs, Raiders, I think Chiefs win. It just re-scrambles this a little bit. If the Raiders win, that's fine too. I mean, they're both fine matchups. Really, all it changes is Buff Jacks, and I think all these are fine. So, right now it would be Chiefs, Lamar, and this is kind of what I was talking about. So, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, in this case Trevor, and then Mahomes, right? All scrambling, get in the later seeds. The Chargers being the only exception, with the Patriots and Broncos. I think that's an interesting story. Anyway, I think the Chiefs do win this game, and the Dolphins wouldn't get in with a win anyway. So this is what I was. I went through all the permutations, and they are an unrealistic team to make the playoffs, but they can make it fun. But I think the Patriots win this game just to keep their seed, keep it interesting. So yeah, the Dolphins winning, it wasn't any. I'm sure a few people were watching like, oh, he really wants them to get in. No, I just thought they were going to win those games, a couple of primetime games, things like that. Eagles here, I do think they win. I have the Commanders not doing too good, but when you shut down the quarterback, what else do you want? Steelers, Ravens. I'm gonna go Steelers here. Um, I just think it makes sense. Again, I kind of went into it earlier. If the Ravens get a win over the Steelers, it kind of even back in week of whenever I went into it, week 14, week 15, it kind of secures the division for them immediately, which just because of the tiebreakers, which makes it not fun. So I do think the Colts will get this one, and again, I know I went into how I think they're boring, and I don't think they're going to go far into the playoffs, and maybe the Texans do make more sense. Looking at it, well, it wouldn't be the Texans; it'd be Los Angeles that gets it instead. But you can really go either way with this one. It doesn't make that much of a difference. For me, Los Angeles is more fun. The Colts, it would be more of a they'd basically have to like lose out not to get in. Colts Patriots is always fun just because obviously you have the history, even though it was Manning versus Brady, it's still an interesting one. So like I could really go either way with this one, between Colts and Texans. I think the Chargers are just a little more fun, so that's the reason I edge Texans. So anyway, if the Colts get in, that's fine, but I just think this makes a little more sense. It's a little more fun, in my opinion. And then Dallas is going to keep it close, obviously, in my opinion. You can see with that win they don't quite get in, but with other teams losing, possibly. Bengals, Browns, I don't think it's a reach to say the Bengals win that one. And that, bam, last game puts them in. How convenient. So I don't think it's a coincidence that it works that way, And again, I tried to be realistic. I think I gave them a loss against the Dolphins. So, you see it doesn't take too much. Conveniently, the Steelers are playing the Ravens. So they're going to kind of cancel each other out. And yeah, I just think it makes sense. I think the Bears will win this game against the Lions. And, you can go Lions. If you go Lions, it flips it this way. I'm sorry, that's a tie. If you go Lions, it flips it this way. And it flips the Bears out, and then you can get something like this maybe. So it really just comes down to matchups. And if the Bears win, but it's the Vikings over the Packers, we get this. So anyway, I do think the Bears will beat the Lions. And I do think that the Falcons, Saints, I think it's going to go to the Falcons. They're the better team, and I think the Saints are trash, and pops the Falcons in. Maybe not quite as realistic as the Bengals, but I'm sticking with it. I think they're the most entertaining team in that division, especially if even some of their guys are healthy. I'll give this one to Buffalo. That just keeps them in the playoffs. And then you have Bucks Panthers here. So a Panthers win is Falcons, a Bucks win is Bucks. And I think the Panthers win it. A tie would be interesting, huh? But I think Panthers win it. Not just for the Falcons, but again, I tried to split up the Panthers and the Bucks, so they each get one kind of like 50-50 booking. And then finally it's Jags, Titans, and if Titans win, you see not much changes. If Jags win, I don't think much changes either. They stay the 3 seed. So on the NFC side, there's essentially the possibility of it. Is it going to be Detroit? Is it going to be what kind of matchup are we going to get? And I think this is what it looks like. So in this case, the Bears would get the 7 seed. Now, this to me makes more sense, just because I think actually beginning of the year I had them going 11-6. So to me, this makes more sense. Oh, and I noticed I didn't pick Seahawks, Niners. There we go. All right. So anyway, that makes more sense to me for the Bears to win the division, and the Lions to kind of sneak in. Now, you see the Packers aren't getting in here, and the Packers beat the Vikings. They do get in. So again, it just comes down to, do you think the Packers get in or the Lions? The The Packers just made the Micah Parsons trade. They have the tie. The Vikings beating the Packers may be unrealistic. But again, I have other matchups where it goes the Packers' way. So, do you find Detroit, Seattle, or Green Bay, Seattle more entertaining? I honestly find Detroit, Seattle a little more entertaining. Although, again, these ties, I do think will probably wind up making a difference. Let's, I'm on St. Brown. I'm not sure what's going on with him. Let's go ahead and stick with this. I think this makes sense. Because to be honest, there's not much more Detroit can do outside of like going to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Anything else would be a letdown. So I feel like this could be a year they kind of get let down. Campbell gives a whole speech about how they lost their hunger, whatever. And maybe they make a change. So anyway, not from him, but from the quarterback. So this is what we're looking at. Oh, and I thought I could pick winners. No? I guess not. Okay. Well, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way. This isn't going to be the easiest to explain, but it's fine. Essentially, this is the bracket that I think we're going to get. And I'll just run through who I think will win. Again, if we get these playoffs. So as you can see, this would be an interesting one. It'll be Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen all making late season runs. Lamar can't get in there too, just because that division's so weak. The other team can't make it in as a wild card. So it would be fun. But that's kind of going to be the story anyway. It's going to be those 4 teams, those guys racing for the seed. And then on this side, I think these are some fresh matchups. So we're still on the AFC side. Denver obviously gets the bye. New England, Chargers. So this is kind of where we find out, pretender versus contender. And again, these matchups are probably not going to be perfect. But I'm basically going to, no matter what, I have like the same conference finals and stuff like that. No matter what, it's always going to be like the same 4 teams. This one I could see going either way, to be quite honest. I think simply to avoid, because they're very easy to get repeats and things like that, I'm going to go with New England. And by repeats, I mean like if the Chargers win, you run a very big risk of, well, you would actually get it for sure. If the Chargers win, we get Denver versus Los Angeles in the next round, which would be them playing 3 times in a row. Not in a row, but 3 times. They try and avoid, even though it's the division matchup, they really do try and avoid division rivalries in the division matchup. So anyway, I think Patriots win. Then we got Chiefs, Jags. If the Chiefs are going to make this run into the playoffs, they're definitely winning. So Mahomes beats Trevor, in my opinion. And that leaves Bills and Bengals here. And here's another interesting one because beginning of the year, I had a feeling about the Bengals. But then I had this idea of the Bills, if there's going to be a time for Josh Allen, it's going to be now. So the AFC I'm a little more open to. And to be honest, these 2 teams right here, Bills, Bengals, I think one is winning the Super Bowl, just personally. I think if they get matched, I just think the representative of the Super Bowl is going to be one of these 2 teams. So it's just who makes more sense. If Burrow makes this comeback, does he win? Or, does Josh Allen win? I could say the Bills don't seem quite themselves this year. But they've done that in the past. I'm just going to go ahead and say Cincinnati. I think it's fun. And if that is what we get, then we're going to have the 2-seed Patriots, the 1-seed Broncos. The Broncos would match up with the Chiefs, which would be a divisional. Like I said, you can't avoid them all. And the Patriots would match up with the Bengals. I think the Bengals would beat the Patriots. And we got Broncos, Chiefs. I think Chiefs would beat the Broncos, right? So now we got Chiefs, Bengals. 2 teams that made late, season runs to make the playoffs. Burrow versus Mahomes. And finally, I think, Burrow beats Mahomes, moves on to the Super Bowl. Actually, it wouldn't be finally; it'd be his second time doing it. He did it against the played the Rams, but gets back to the Super Bowl. Just have a feeling, I could be wrong. And if it's not him, even though I have them getting beaten the first round, just because I have them playing in the first round, if it's not Burrow, I genuinely think it's going to be Josh Allen and the Bills. So I'm more open to the AFC. So there we go. AFC, Bengals, I guess, backup Bills. But I'm not one for backups. I'm not a coward. So I'll stick with the Bengals. And yeah, it would be, I think, pretty fresh. Not a bunch of rematches and a fun playoff with eventually, again, Burrow beating Mahomes. And then we have the East side. Eagles get the bye. They're the best team. Now, maybe the Seahawks get it. I'm open to I tried to get this where, again, the playoff matchups make sense. They're fun. And we don't have a bunch of rematches and stuff like that. So I'd have the Panthers in this spot instead of the Bucks. I'm sorry, instead of the Falcons. But the Niners have they just played the Panthers, and it was a good game, kind of a good game. And the idea of McCaffrey versus old team is cool, but I just think it's going to be the Falcons. So anyway, Eagles get the bye. Seattle, Green Bay. I think Seattle wins. I do. I just think. I think they're positioning certain teams in the NFC to look almost unstoppable, And it's going to be Seattle or the Rams. So you can flip them too, to be quite honest. Maybe it goes the other way. We get Green Bay versus the Rams and Seattle versus Chicago. And the Rams pummel the Packers. That's what I'm saying. It's interchangeable. But I think my overall, idea of the booking is going to be pretty close. So I think Seattle wins decisively, moves on. And I think they are the favorite, although I don't know if they'd be the Vegas favorites. I do think the Bears win as well. I kind of went into this year how I think the Bears are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I think the Niners win. That moves the Niners on. And being the lowest seed, they would play the Eagles. And we would get, I think, a really fun match. Seattle versus Chicago. And I think between San Francisco and Philly, I actually think the Niners would win. I think the Eagles are going to underwhelm. Sorry, there's a plane going. I'm outside and there's like a plane. I think the Niners are going to kind of come out of nowhere. The Niners are giving me vibes from the Eagles from last year. If you remember the Eagles last year, they had the Super Bowl year, and then they just had like a really bad year. And then last year, they were just kind of hanging around while like the Lions and these other teams just ate people alive. And then in the playoffs, nobody could stop the Eagles. I'm seeing that with the Niners this year, where it's like they just want people to forget that they're a really, really good team. So everyone's watching the Rams and the Seahawks and the Bears and all these other teams. And I feel like the Niners are just chilling in the middle, just like the Eagles were last year. So I'd love the Niners to beat the Eagles and go to the NFC Championship, which would leave Chicago, Seattle, and you know my logic. I don't think Seattle Niners would be much of a draw for a third time. I do think a very, as far as historical, Chicago, San Francisco, two of the most storied franchises ever meeting up in the NFC Championship. And what makes it even better is its first versus last. It's goofy, last drafted, dad bod Brock Purdy versus the All-American talent, first overall pick, 5-star Leatherman, Caleb. It's just a perfect story. It's even better than, like Purdy or Stafford because, Stafford's not athletic and young. So, well, Purdy's young, but Caleb's even younger. So, yeah, I think that's a great story. I think Niners-Bears would be a great matchup for the NFC Championship. And I do think last, Mr. Irrelevant would win. And it would give us, you can see I really like this first versus last. It would give us in the Super Bowl, Cincinnati, first overall pick Joe Burrow versus San Francisco, last pick. Purdy. I think they play in San Francisco. Oh no, that's Levi. I think they play in California though, so it would still be interesting. Burrow would be going back to where he lost in LA, I believe, and playing the Niners, who obviously have a little bit of Super Bowl regrets, losing to the Chiefs and whatnot. So, yeah, you can let me know what you think. Again, you can eliminate some of these teams if the Chargers don't get in, fine. If the Lions get in instead of the Packers, fine. Even if it's Atlanta or Tampa instead of the Falcons, fine too. Um, I just think this makes the most sense. I think it's convenient how, again, I kind of split a lot of these up. I didn't do uh, this team has to win out. Actually, the only team I had really winning out was Miami for funsies, and I never once thought they were going to get in the playoffs and still don't. So, yeah, it should be interesting. Maybe Indy doesn't lose as many games as I think, or maybe who knows? Maybe Pittsburgh destroys Buffalo tomorrow and blows everything up. But I think this is kind of what we're gonna get. I wish it let me actually advance the playoffs, but I guess we don't have. There's an actual playoff simulator, so once we get there, we can do that. But I think I explained it where you can kind of understand. Top seed plays bottom seed, and outside of like one or two divisional rematches, I have it here where we have some fun matchups we haven't seen this year. Or if it is a rematch, it's a good one. And with the teams I have winning, I think Chiefs, Bengals, Niners, Bears is a pretty fun Final Four. So you can let me know what you think. You can let me know which takes are the most garbage and which takes you think are going to age the best. Just let's run it back from the beginning of the year to take our good takes and bad takes. I would say a good take 100% is our Chiefs take. That not only weren't they going to win the division, but it would be tough for them. It would be unlikely they even make the playoffs. That one obviously aged well. To cancel that out, I said the Raiders were going to make a run and probably finish as a wild card team. So that was pretty embarrassing. I think our Bengals prediction, making a run and getting in, is looking pretty good. At the beginning of the year, that wasn't my prediction. I thought they were just going to get in. But I did stick with them when I gave up on other teams. And the Falcons, we'll see how that one holds up. The Niners one, I think, is the most interesting because it just seems like a carbon copy of last year. The only thing I don't like is they're plus 3,000 to win the Super Bowl. So, maybe Vegas doesn't love them to win it. But again, you can always play them to win it and hedge when the game comes. So, not too worried about that. So yeah, maybe not worth, or not a bad idea to drop a pretty penny on them. I already have some money on the Bears from preseason, so I drop a little bit on San Francisco and hope for an upset in round one with the Rams or something, and yeah, could be looking pretty good. AFC, I'm not overlooking the Broncos and Patriots. I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl. I will concede if an AFC team goes to the Super Bowl, and it's not who I think, like the Allen Burrow getting their redemption, I then could see, a team of nobodies, if you will, the Patriots, getting there, especially without Bill Belichick if they're trying to like punish the guy. I could kind of see that. And on the NFC side, the only team that I could see getting in that nobody would really expect, because honestly, if you look at these 7 teams outside of the Falcons, I don't think any one of these teams would be a shock to make the Super Bowl. But one team that would be, and again, they're a quiet team, but they give me just kind of weird vibes. If the Panthers were the team to win the NFC South, for some reason I feel like they could maybe do something, but I don't think that's going to happen, to be quite honest. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I was able to keep it under an hour, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, if you don't want a deep breakdown, that's fine. I do like the quick ones every week. But I kind of wanted to cover the playoffs and kind of why I have not every single, game, but specific outcomes for specific weeks. Again, I think at the very least, just simply picking the Bengals the next 3 weeks. Well, this is one of them. You know, I had them winning today. And then week 14, 15, they should be underdogs or 50-50 in those games. And then even Miami. I have Miami beating them, though, so maybe we stop there. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. What happens if they win? Does that change anything? No, okay. I was curious. So, yeah, again, I'm curious what you guys think, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Celebrating mine, like, tomorrow, well, later tomorrow, and then Saturday, because just getting the family together, you know, is not always the easiest on one given day, so that's kind of why I had some time today, and now we're, you know, this morning, but yeah, I wanted to get this out while, because NBA is coming up. But we have NBA already, and I want to get those videos out. So it's going to be hard with playoff videos, regular season, to do a deep breakdown. So I thought I would do it now, because I'm not a coward, and I figured this way, it might age like milk in a suitcase, you know, or it might age pretty good. And last season, I did kind of wait till like week 16 before kind of doing this style, because it was unrealistic to do it beforehand. But this year I'm like, you know what, let's do it beforehand and see how close we come. So take care, and hope you guys enjoy.